in Baltimore and have their mini camp. It will get very, very quiet around here, hopefully without jurisprudence and off-the-field issues on the WNST text service for the next 6 or 7 weeks at the conclusion of this week. Luke is on the field sweating it out there with the guys in purple. I was out there on Tuesday, and the addition this week of Jeremy Maclin, I think, has a little pep in the step of everyone out at Owings Mills, and for every player acquired, there is another team who lost Jeremy Maclin. That would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Adam Teicher covers all things Chiefs out in the friendly heart of the Midwest in one of my favorite towns in America, Kansas City, Missouri. I don't know if he's on the Missouri side or the Kansas side, but he's doing it all at Adam Teicher on Twitter as well as at ESPN, out at ESPN.com and out on Twitter. Adam, what's going on, man? Were you as sort of taken aback by the Maclin release as maybe some other in the end? I don't think the Ravens believed he was going to bind up on the market 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were surprised, but looking back on it now, it added up. The Chiefs drafted a receiver, albeit in the fourth round, but they still drafted a receiver during this year's draft. And general manager John Dorsey said something interesting afterwards. He talked about he felt like there was a need to increase their depth and competition at wide receiver, and that at the time that comment made no sense because they seemed to be set at the position. But now, in the light of Maclin's release, it makes a lot more sense. So I think the Chiefs have been thinking about this for a while. They had to clear some cap room. They couldn't even sign their remaining draft picks, the ones they hadn't signed, until they cleared some cap room. So they had to do something. There were some other moves they could have made, but they're kind of thinking that maybe Maclin is on the downhill slide of his career. We'll see if they're right or not, but they felt like they could get along without him. They could replace him at a much cheaper cost. So they made the move.
It is interesting in the modern NFL where you could sign a 4 or 5 year deal. Almost all these deals feel like 2-year deals after the release. You take some dead money on. But, when you let a guy go at the end of a contract, I mean, the Ravens lost Ricky Wagner this offseason. They would have loved to have kept him. The number got out of hand. He got a big bid in Detroit. He goes. And you feel bad and you say goodbye. It's a whole different thing, I think, in June when you're cutting players because you don't have money. And it kind of is a little more sour and I think more difficult for the player to go out in the marketplace and find the job. Or there's a team out there and a suitor out there that has just that need. And obviously he made this trip to Buffalo and Baltimore, but there is a little feeling from a fan base who doesn't see him play to say, what's wrong with Jeremy Maclin, right? So, from your perspective, I think all your off-season stuff factored him in. What's good about Jeremy? What did the Ravens get in Jeremy Maclin this week, Adam?
Well, we're going to find out. I mean, last year he had the least productive year of his NFL career. He missed 4 games with a groin injury, and even when he was in the lineup, just didn't play, just wasn't very productive. And, he and Alex Smith looked like complete strangers a lot of the time, and that kind of came to a head in the playoff game against the Steelers. The Chiefs missed a big play down the field late in the game when Maclin got open deep, and he turned one way on the route, and Alex Smith threw the ball the other way, and it was an incomplete pass on a play where the Chiefs were trailing and could have used that big play might have won the game for him. So it just was a disjointed season from start to finish, and you just don't know sometimes with guys. He's 29. You don't know whether he's starting that slide when guys start to lose their skills. To me, the timing of this move on the Chiefs' part was interesting. Certainly they waited until after June 1 so they could get the maximum cap benefit this year. But they'd also started their off-season practice, and they got to look at not only Maclin, but some of their younger receivers. And I think that played into it. I think they saw some things from some of their younger guys that led them to say, hey, you know what, we can make this move. We can live without Jeremy Maclin. So, I think he's going to be determined. I think he's going to be If it's in him at all, he'll have a nice season for the Ravens. But I don't know that it was going to happen here with the Chiefs. It certainly might have, but we're not going to know now.
Well, what do you expect? I mean, you watch the league, you watch the game, you know who Joe Flacco is. You know, we sat around here for the entire offseason talking about who's Flacco going to throw the ball to other than Perryman, and obviously Mike Wallace is back. But then Pitta goes down, the running back gets popped with a 4-game suspension to start the year, and Dixon, the offensive line's in a little bit of flux. Flacco didn't look very good last year. I mean, there's a lot of questions here, and then draft day, or draft 3 days, I should say, they didn't really get him any help. They drafted a couple of interior linemen later on in the draft, and we were all saying, well, maybe they like Perryman more than we think they do. And you feel like late on, there's not going to be a player of this caliber with these kind of credentials hit the market. But, the truth is, it really is a 12-month league, and stranger things happen. He pops, the Ravens grab him. What do you expect out of him? You think he's going to catch 60 or 70 balls in this kind of an offense in a different look? Do you believe he has that in him?
Yeah, assuming that he's going to be an every down player in Baltimore. Yeah, I think he could put up those kind of numbers. I mean, last year he had 44 catches, missing 4 games, like I mentioned earlier. So I think Jeremy Maclin still has that kind of season in him. Depending on what else the Ravens have around him, but assuming he's an every down guy, yeah, I think he could get into the 60s, maybe even 70s as far as pass receptions. He's just 1 year removed from catching 87 passes for the Chiefs and going over 1,000 yards. So, it's not like that's a distant memory for him.
Adam Teicher covers all things Kansas City Chiefs for ESPN NFL Nation, and you can follow him out on Twitter at Adam Teicher. That's Teicher. He's been out covering the Chiefs there. You've seen a lot of guys come through. I mean, you remember writing about Maclin as the exciting offseason acquisition in big bucks, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, wasn't that long ago. Chiefs gave him that big contract, for sure.
Well, it happens quickly, I guess, in the league. And, these off seasons all take on a life of their own. And I'm sure draft day was interesting for you when the Chiefs decide to go take a franchise quarterback in Pat Mahomes. I mean, some thoughts about that and the aftermath of that and Alex Smith. And, look, Andy's going to do as good a job as anybody at sort of managing this thing. But not every franchise goes out and takes a quarterback they're probably not going to play.
Yeah, the Chiefs hope he's a franchise quarterback. We'll find out if he is or not. But, you have to applaud the Chiefs for this. I mean, they've been on the sidelines as far as a quarterback in the first round, drafting quarterback for 34 years until they drafted Pat Mahomes this year. And, that's a long time to play with a bunch of guys who are rejects and backups for other teams.
That's a lot of Dave Craigs and Joe Montana signed from other places.
Well, the Montana wasn't the problem, but some of these other guys have been the problem. I mean, there's been a lot of years when the Chiefs have had very good teams, but when they've gotten to the playoffs, they've run into quarterbacks like John Elway or Dan Marino or Tom Brady
is it fair to say the last time they walked on a field with the best quarterback late in a season was Montana, when they really had the best quarterback, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, even at that, I mean, Montana was at the end of his career, but the Chiefs have lost something like 9 out of their last 10 playoff games. And you look at the quarterback matchups and you say, well, no wonder why. I mean, the one playoff game they won, the Chiefs had Alex Smith and they played the Houston Texans, and the Houston Texans started Brian Hoyer. I mean, otherwise you're talking about a bunch of guys like Roethlisberger and Brady and one-time Joe Flacco and Manning a couple times. Dan Marino, John Elway going back a few years. So you're talking about the Chiefs being at a huge quarterback deficit in a lot of their playoff losses over the last several years. So, you just have to applaud the Chiefs for identifying a guy and then making a bold move to go up and get him. And, there's no hurry to play him. They've got Alex Smith. I think the Chiefs are determined not to screw up Pat Mahomes. And by that, I mean, they're not going to play him before they believe he's ready. I mean, they're not going to let outside forces, whether that's Smith not playing well or Smith getting injured. I don't think they'll let that affect the timetable for when Mahomes gets in the lineup. That'll be more of a factor of when Mahomes is ready. So you just have to applaud the Chiefs after, so many years of poor quarterback play or let's put it inferior. At times they were getting decent play, but generally speaking, inferior quarterback play to their opponents, particularly when they got into the playoffs. You just have to applaud them for at least giving it a shot and not saying, well, we're going to have another whatever number of years with a quarterback who's been cast off by another team.
Adam, on the division, and I guess it's to say, well, how are the Chiefs going to be this year? How good are they going to be? The division is really in a strange place right now, certainly for Denver. I mean, Oakland's going to be moving a franchise. The Chargers you're going to be going out to a soccer stadium that's 30,000 seats to see them. But, there's been some real upheaval out there, and it feels to me like that, at least with the Chiefs, there's been this level of consistency with Andy Reid and Alex Smith and the defense. And to me, I expect them to be a playoff team this year. Are you of that mindset?
Yeah, I would think so. I think they got a pretty solid program here. To me, the thing that sticks out about the AFC West going from last year to this year is I don't really feel like any of the teams really made any kind of bold moves to improve themselves immediately. We talked about the Chiefs making the bold move for a quarterback, but that's not going to help them this year. And, I think the Chiefs are going to need to, basically improve on what they had last year because it's going to be largely the same cast of guys. They're not going to get a whole lot of help from their free agents group, which was very small this year. They're not going to get a whole lot of immediate help from their draft. And I feel that that's more or less the same way for the Broncos and the Raiders and the Chargers. I mean, you look at there was really no huge impact free agent who came into the division this year. As far as the drafts go, in San Diego and in Denver, a lot of the draft resources were spent on fixing their offensive lines, which in both places needed to happen. But that's not necessarily going to be high impact guys. And the Raiders need to fix that defense. They were that's really what held them back last year. They would have won the division otherwise. So just interesting to see what happened in this division over the offseason.
Man, I had a layover going up to Seattle I went to see U2 about a month ago, and I actually flew through San Diego, and I landed in the airport there, and I'm like, I saw the Chargers stuff, and I feel kind of sick about it, but I'm thinking, I'm never going to go back to San Diego for a football game ever again. They're not getting a team again. And, now Oakland's moving down to Vegas. If you're a Chiefs fan, there's a whole, different thing going on out there, right?
Yeah. You need to change your itineraries, or particularly in a couple of years. Yeah, it is going to be weird not going to San Diego for a football game, and pretty soon it's going to be weird not going to Oakland for a game. So yeah, definitely some different times for the AFC West, and it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out in these new cities for these Raiders and the Chargers.
Hey, man, things change. Ask Royals and Orioles fans like us, right? I mean, we were at the top 2 years ago. Not so good right now for the summer, which makes the Chiefs and the Ravens, I think, all that much more important in our respective cities. Adam, man, it's always great to visit with you. Please send barbecue, or I'm looking for a layover in Kansas City at some point. I need an excuse to get back out there. I will. I shall.
Yeah, it's good eating out here for sure.
Oh, man, I've gained so much weight. God, keep me out of there. Adam, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, anytime.
After a week of milkshakes and smoothies and soups, I need me some Kansas City barbecue. Adam Teicher, the longtime ESPN NFL Nation reporter out in Kansas City, Missouri. You can find him at Adam Teicher. That's Teicher. And, of course, at ESPN.com as well. Tens of thousands of Chiefs fans follow him. He covers them better than anyone. Good little look there at Jeremy Maclin. We got the Orioles all week long, leaving Chicago on their way to St. Louis, or on their way home to play St. Louis here in the midst of an ugly, ugly little period of time for the Birds. We've been talking about that a lot around here as well. You can find me out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, and anywhere we travel, you travel in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. That is always there for you. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.